forensic water analysis. This involves different some parameters: conductivity, pH value, alkalinity, hardness, detection of other substances like iron. And then what equipment do we use? This requires different instruments, of course the technical know-how, and different sample processors prior to analysis of the water. Okay. Analysis of water for drinking. We're going to be looking at physical analysis, biological analysis, chemical assessment or analysis. So the physical, the sample is received for analysis, and it needs to be examined for its uniformity of composition and freedom from cracks, loose seals, or leaking containers before undertaking its analysis. Some pure water companies or sachet water companies present their samples with leakages here and there. That one can be rejected from the scratch, because it also shows that any other thing can creep into that water, so it must be intact. And then looking at the labeling and everything, it should also show some seriousness. Once there are some errors in typos and all of that, then we can just put it aside, because this serious business we are talking about here. So the primary packaging, secondary packaging are very important. Label, address, and expiry dates and all these stuff. In fact, before we move ahead, we look at the physical characteristics and parameters. Once it's found one thing, we are going to stop there. Then biological, what sort of bacteria they have. Like we said earlier, all the list of bacteria we listed before, gram negative, gram positive, we want to be sure that pose health risk to the users. So what are the methods we use for analysis of water? First, we're going to do membrane filtration, accurate. In general, 100 ml of water sample is forced through a vacuum through a small round filter paper and the membrane using a little hand pump. And then it is the membrane now that we now use, which we believe should have retained some pathogens that we use for the analysis. All the bacteria in the sample are caught on the filters as the water passes through them, and then we can now proceed with all the microbiological protocols in isolating, characterizing these organisms, and of course quantifying them too. So PCR is also used, which we don't have all around us here, to detect pathogens in a water sample in a matter of hours. Within hours, we can tell the kind of organisms that we have in that water supply using the technology of PCR. So PCR requires target DNA to be replicated. A pair of primers specific to target, buffers, and pack polymerase enzymes are needed for us to use PCR, to isolate, characterize, and quantify the organisms that we have in the water that is sent to us. So fecal coliform and total coliform have been previously used for PCR, so that we can reduce the for analysis and have something of very high quality. E. coli is considered to be the species of coliform bacteria that is best indicator for fecal pollution. Of course, there are other sources of E. coli, but the fecal E. coli appears to be of a paramount consideration. So we go to chemical analysis. In chemical, we use modern ion chromatography, to analyze for inorganic and low molecular weight organic anions and cations that are dissolved in water. So with all the numerous pollutants that we talked about earlier, we found out that modern ion chromatography, IC, has given us stress-free analysis in water analysis. And so we need to have one in place. Regulatory authorities should ensure that all the water companies should, especially for drinking, should have one ion chromatographic setup in place to help them do the analysis. Then oxyhalide ions, chlorates, chlorides, bromates, these ones come from water treatment. Once you put the chlorates, hypochlorites into water for analysis, you have too much, and all the chlorates and the chlorides become evidently present, and these have been found to be carcinogenic. In our hospitals today, people report of cancers of different organs, and sincerely we don't know where all this come from, and because the epidemiological studies have not been thoroughly followed. In short, they are not elaborate. And so what we do in developing countries is to treat sicknesses. We don't put attention to, how to nip the progress of the sicknesses in the body. So pre-treatment of samples by passing through an ultrafiltration cell mounted on an IC sample is a must. And this protocol and procedure needs some technical know-how, and we like to say that the way we treat the samples before we pass into ion chromatographic system is what guarantees and drives the result that we get ultimately. So sample preparation and analysis are therefore on many ICs automatic. But the truth is that to get such automated IC system, it takes a lot of money, in thousands of dollars. So water for industrial use. Different industries use water for different purposes, and then the requirements they have for water is also different. And so manufacturing and other industries use water for production. Some use it for cooling of their equipment, and with that you can see that the requirements are not exactly the same. So examples of industries that use water: leather production industry, fibers and textile industry, pharmaceutical industry, food processing and production industry, paper production industry, smelting, and all of that. And so we're going to pay more attention on pharmaceutical industry, but this seems to have more stringent conditions or requirements. So analysis of water for pharmaceutical use, physical, microbiological, pH measurement, and all of that. So all of this has to be put into consideration when we are analyzing water for pharmaceutical. Activity measurement is also a must in water for injection or water for pharmaceutical use. And conductive detection with sequential suppression is injection of about 100 microliter of water, just a very fractional volume, and the result we need is with us. So use of IC coupled with mass spec, column, and VIS detection to detect and quantify dissolved solids is also a common practice today. And so some values for parameters in water analysis are listed here. For instance, analysts will need to look at all of this and ensure that the result he has, having done all the analysis, complies with what we have in the pharmacopoeia and the standards. Chromatographic equipment, high pressure liquid chromatography, ion chromatography, gas chromatography, these are popular, they are used. And I like to, let my viewers know that they need to be conversant with the way this works for them to be able to use it for analysis. Then, in ion chromatography, slide tells or explains how that works. It works by ion exchange resins that are used to separate atomic or molecular ions based on their interaction with the resins. And so with those interactions, there is separation and subsequent quantification. It just works like the HPLC. It's a modification of HPLC. The main advantage of this is that multiple ions can be analyzed together. So in one result, you can see the ions, cations, anions, and all of that, the organics presented, and it's quite very interesting to use it. So GC is also very useful in water analysis, especially when we have some volatile organics as contaminants in that water. So spectrophotometry, atomic absorption spectrophotometry will help us detect all the elemental components, all the zinc, lead, mercury, acid, all of them that can be of great health risk can be detected in their levels in parts per million. So mass spec can help us through its concept of mass to charge ratio detect and help us, bring out what kind of contaminants we have in the water we are analyzing. Thank you very much.